Hello folks, Podbrew.com here are in episode together with Valentin Solovyov.
Hello.
We're continuing our series of reviewing the basic sets, particularly commons and uncommons only. This time around it's blue, so everything you know and want to know about blue cards in general, so we're gonna cover it. So I already filtered out in the spoiler um, all the parameters accordingly. So we're gonna start with the sweet one. It's the spell wheel.
Yeah, it's a really good card, but high variance card. Uh, the on the more Hearthstone side of the cards, Faeria has, it can screw you over sometimes, but overall, you will have good value out of it because sometimes it gives you good legendaries. Sometimes it will give you Sunken Tower, for example, and you will do nothing with it. So but it's a spell, so it has spell synergies, and it's zero mana. Get two cards. Normally, you get at least one good out of them, and if the game goes long, like for example fatigue, you should. It's good that it doesn't actually draw, but creates two new cards. But I would advise against auto including it in every deck because some decks just aren't suited for it. It's random after all. Sometimes you just want consistency, and the fact that you play zero mana event doesn't do you anything. In that case, you might not include it, but usually I play it in every deck if I'm playing blue. Yeah.
Okay, let's just say I never saw Rubberfish and I don't think people should play it. I never saw Sunken Tower, I don't think people should play it. I did see people playing Shifting Tide, especially in the control deck with Spell Whirl and the Colossi that previously became cheaper for each card you drew. Now they're fixed. Would you still play Shifting Tide with the nerfed
Just
epics?
well, there is a god ranked number two player at the current moment who splashes blue in his mono green deck just to play Shifting Tide.
Huh?
That should tell you. Well, the deck he was playing was is mainly focused around controlling Faeria wells. This allows you to move around the battlefield faster. It's basically like Flash Wind from Yellow. It allows you extra movement if you need at the beginning of the game. Plus, it actually replaces itself. I wouldn't say it's auto include, but it's really close to that in blue decks. Shifting Tide is really good. It's just that sometimes the effect isn't good enough and you want something else in the deck. But usually, one or two Shifting Tide in the blue decks is, nearly always a given. And the Ruby Fish, I wouldn't be skipping it so fast because it's basically like Farm Boy, one mana, 1/1. It's easy to make this a harvester, and you don't actually need to spend any land drops for it to start harvesting. Like you can send it to left side and move your land drops to right side. So it's like Farm Boy. It's a decent harvester. Probably not good enough to include, but I think people actually are underestimating Rubyfish and Farm Boy. So that's the reason you're not seeing them. Not because they aren't good enough. Sunken Tower uh, has its uses, but generally, I agree with you that it's not good enough. Moving a land and the fact that its activation ability is not the immediate active, so makes it too slow and not good enough for a card slot. Though it's cheap, so
Right.
you might consider it.
Okay, seems like I actually didn't filter the epics. Well, now I did. Now I did.
Okay.
Because we're concentrating on commons and rares.
Yep.
So second roll would then be Gabriel Enchantment. Very cool card. I want to see more of that combo deck so that I would know what's the best list of it.
Well, the Gabriel enchantment is really good with the when you're playing green. Green has big toughness fatties, like for example, 3 mana, 1/7 taunt, living willow, and Gabriel enchantment is really good with cards like those. I saw some amount of them, so it's plus it's randomly a debuff for opponent's creatures when he has 6/1s or 6/2s, something like that. Then Gabriel enchantment makes them 2/2s, so you can kill them without killing your own creature.
Right.
Though it's limited because you actually need to be playing green to make use out of it usually.
I'm not so sure because the next cards right next to it now, in this row, you have the 05 guy, and then also out of blue, I believe, after choosing an option, you can create a 5 mana 3/7.
Yeah, but the point that one is a bad example because you actually could. The alternative is creating a 7/3, so you could actually get the attack value without Gabriel enchantment. Yes, but yeah, you could play it in blue, but usually it's best played with green because when you're playing blue, you have better options. If you splash, it's not just not good enough for mono blue, and when you're splashing anything else than green, Gabriel enchantment becomes not good enough. That's the feeling I'm usually getting with that card. You really want to be playing green high toughness guys for to get maximum value out of a Gabriel enchantment. Though you could try doing it with mono blue, it's not like you
Right.
can't do it.
Then Trident Sanctuary, I've seen people playing it, but I've seen it played in pretty much mono blue decks, which looked very weird. And like I was wondering why it's in their deck because it doesn't really draw you cards. It just maybe accelerates you a little bit. But what I saw from those decks, from those players, would be like killing with just Colossi and something. And but by the time they would actually start doing anything on the board except for like gathering resources and cycling cards, you can kill them pretty much with any deck.
Well, that's actually the card that you have more experience with than me because I have never actually seen anybody play this. Maybe that's because I passed the low ranks too fast, but I didn't actually see anybody play Triton Sanctuary. So it's technically you could get Faeria out of it, especially with some other. There is a red creature I think that boosts the life of a structure, so it's interesting. But otherwise, this is I believe this is just not worth it, and it seems majority of the people agree with me on that because I really haven't seen anybody play it myself.
Right, then we move on to the nerfed Humbling Vision.
Yeah, right now, just if they did it a constant like -3, -0, or -4, -0 buff, it would still be good, but rounding it to half makes it kind of pointless. The whole card, I mean, because if it's like 8/8, dude, it becomes 4/8. It okay, it doesn't kill you as fast, but it still is threatening enough. And if it's dude like 3/5 or 4/5, something around that range, it becomes 2/5, and it's still big. Well, I mean, it still deals damage and survives majority. So this kind of halving just doesn't do anything right. The card just doesn't do anything right now. That's its main issue.
Right. We should remind people that previously it was set target creature's attack to 1.
Yeah. It was auto included in blue decks, and one of the reasons blue was good. But now maybe it's better that way because other colors can actually play.
Okay. Ready, steady, go. So Lore Thief, good. Harvester that draws 2 cards when you play it. It's good, and you can just have it as a free body if you really want to. If you don't really need new cards.
Yeah, but I would like to remind you. Previously, it was very good because of the blue colossi, which is now nerfed. and the card is good by itself, but it usually is not as good as it was before, and now just not played enough. But the best card of the whole blue color is here, Ninja Toad. That card is insane value, like one of the best cards. And okay, maybe the blue legendary Aurora Mythmaker might be better, but Ninja Toad is just great. If you're playing blue, you just practically have to play Ninja Toads. Not only because of the flavor, but the jump and haste makes so much value out of it, because you can play it near one of your fairy wells and jump to another fairy well, which makes it practically 1 mana 3/2.
Stop. So yeah, Darkstalk, you need to play an event this turn to make it cheaper, to make it actually playable. In this case, I don't know.
Shifting Tide and Spell Well are good blue events, and other colors also have events. I actually tried playing it. Right now I cut it from my blue decks, but it might actually return because it's 1 mana, 1 blue requirement, 3/2. That's actually nice because you get good value, and the fact that it's easy to play is good. But certainly not for every deck, but it is underestimated.
Right. Could be underestimated, but I think it's generally not amazing because it's only really worth it in a very specific deck.
True, but what I want to say by underestimated is that nobody actually plays it. And I heard other people agreeing with me that that shouldn't be the case. It should be played somewhere, not like totally unplayable.
Okay, do you like the Disciple more than Darkstalker?
Well, I actually played Disciple in every of my blue event decks, and it was good. Maybe not good enough, but the fact that it can grow to 7/7 without much of an effort is testament to how strong it might be. The fact that it requires 2 lakes and that it's slightly slow on the uptake is the issue, but as long as you have Spellwell, you can play it really fast and it grows like to 2/3/3 or 4/4 quite easily. So it's a good card, and especially for beginners, I would be playing with Aurora's Disciples in their blue decks.
Right. Well, growing this thing to 7/7 sounds not as simple as it may be, but
Well,
it's impressive. It's impressive. If you can do that, then it's pretty cool. Okay, moving on to the next row. Puddle Jumper is okayish, but nothing like that absurd. I suppose
wait
it's a-
until Pandora mode comes out.
Well, okay, yeah. In limited and in drafts, this is gonna be pretty cool. Like as a cool harvester, which you can put like pretty much anywhere.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
exactly the
In
issue.
constructed, like not super excited about it, but it's still okay.
Yeah, in constructed aquatic fish and farm boy do the job better because they're cheaper.
Right, profits. Moving the land twice. I don't know. It's hard for me to actually evaluate this card properly.
Gimmick. I got it from Spellwell a few times and never liked it. Maybe it's marginally playable in some cases, but I don't like it, the card.
Okay, Enchantress and Commander.
Uh,
Enchantress
Commander-
seems to be awesome. Commander is, I don't know, seems strong, but what is it in practice?
I'll start with Enchantress. It's basically the same as Gabriel Enchantment. You play them both in the same deck. This is just has body attached, and if you play one, you will play another. That's as simple as that. Commander is bad. 4 mana and 2 lakes means it comes out slightly too late, and the fact that it's aquatic makes it really hard to get anywhere. Even with charge, it's usually not good enough. I tried it when they were in Codex Cup, but it was bad. Right now, I wouldn't be playing it anywhere. Just not good enough.
Right,
stats.
next row, Mimic, Warrior. Well, Water Elemental was actually great. Now it's okay-ish. Wisp, in the right deck it's cool, but most of the time you don't have space for it.
Yeah, if you have space, you will play Wisp. Otherwise, and you need a deck that harvests a lot. So Wisp is good if if you're playing it. So it's strong, but not otherwise. Water Elemental was great. Now it's kind of questionable. The main issue with Aquatic is the fact that when you play it against quick or fast decks, it cannot go to opponents' land tiles to block their creatures. That's what's the deal breaker with me, and I'm not sure I will be playing this over some other elementals if I'm splashing other colors. But there is a bonus because you can just same with aquatic fish. You can create it and go to one fairy well and create lands towards another fairy well. That's a definite boost for when you're playing aquatic, but otherwise this is a nerf to the Water Ellie. Mimic and Triton Warrior are fine, but not good enough to be included in the decks because the stat distribution and ability for that mana cost is usually not something you want. You want something better. They're just not powerful enough.
Okay, how big of an impact was the change of the protection into aquatic for the water elemental?
Just huge because previously the body was so good you could just bump him or make him 6/6 with Aurora Mythmaker or green buffs and just kill opposing creature and you would still have a big creature. The protection was really strong. Now it's like it was nearly auto include in any deck, and if you're playing green it was like close to broken. If not for yak attack, the blue was would be dominating. It was actually was dominating in that meta game. Now uh,
Okay, Tyrannax is just a vanilla guy. Battletoads, not really a fan of this card. Warden, pretty good, I would say. Very decent common. Mystic Beast, very situational.
actually Mystic Beast was nerfed previously because it was slightly cheaper to Faeria cheaper. It's situational and you won't usually be including in the deck, but if you get it from Spellwell, it's still decent. It's not bad, and you usually can get in a situation where the attack is ridiculous, especially if opponent is stocking up on Faeria. But yeah, it's situational. Gabriel Warden, the fact that it requires 3 legs made it slightly hard to play. It's decent, but usually I don't find enough room in my decks to include it. But actually, the Tyrannox, the fact that it requires only 1 leg to play, making it, and you have 4/6 body, makes it actually a pretty decent guy. You will be seeing him even in higher ranked play because the body is just efficient. Plus, it has some nice synergies with Goblin Enhancement and some other cards. So, the one you shouldn't be underestimating the fact that it requires only 1 leg. Battle,
Okay, we need to move on.
Okay.
Frogify, we still got it. I'm very happy. Awesome card
Yeah.
from Blue. Really saves your ass in a lot of situations. Great to still have it. Tale of the Old Turtle. The card looks great. I don't have really much experience with it, but seems okay. Lancer is mediocre. Luduan, I don't know in what deck you would want to play this.
In a
really.
deck that wants to gather a lot of Faeria, but it's really quite bad. I think maybe there will come some deck, but no. Snowstorm Lancer is actually really good because of the jump ability. It grows ridiculously fast with events. If you have Shifting Tides as Spellwell, and if you're splashing something else, Snowstorm Lancer can hit for a lot. So this guy is good to play. Tale of the Old Turtle is kind of no. You need some specific decks because usually you will always have 2 to 3 cards in blue decks and usually more to choose from. That's why Tale of the Old Turtle no. Frogify, the blue version of removal. Now that Humbling Vision was nerfed, that's it became much better. But I don't know whether I would want to play it or not. I usually cut it from my decks. Now I have to actually consider. So Battletoads is actually a nice card because 4 mana, 2 frogs with jump is actually really mobile. The 2 lake requirement hurts it slightly, but 2 cards for 1 is actually a nice deal if you're harvesting. It does require some specific deck, but if you're playing blue events decks, which is what you usually want to be playing, if you're not Gabriel Enchantment deck, then frogs are a nice addition. It's a decent card. Then Luduan is kind of questionable because it doesn't actually hit anything for a lot, and okay, it does give you Faeria, 2 Faeria when it's harvesting, but that requires it to survive, which will be hard because it doesn't hit back. Snowstorm Lancer is practically close to auto include in any events decks because the jump ability is really strong in blue. The fact that it can go over 2 tiles and jump over opposing creatures means it's efficient as a harvester, and also it can get close to your opponent's god orb really fast. So if you're having something like Shifting Tides or Spellwell, this will hit for really, really lot and will give you lethals quite easily. Uh, Tale of the Old Turtle is slightly gimmicky card. You actually need to be spending a lot of cards, so that means it's only playable in a decks with really low Faeria average, something like 2.5 or even lower, because you need rituals like the Windfall from a bit later and something else. Otherwise, blue just has stocks up cards in its hand. That's why it's kind of hard to get value out of the tail. But sometimes there are decks that actually play it. I just haven't encountered too much of them. Frogify is actually now the go-to removal for blue because of the nerf to Humbling Vision. It's a nice card, but the fact that it leaves a 2/2 frog with jump shouldn't be underestimated. That frog can screw you over if you're not careful enough, and 5 mana is a bit high on the mana cost. So previously I was cutting this from all of my blue decks. Now it's not so obvious, but I still dislike adding it. I would prefer splashing something and have more fairy efficiency. The biggest issue with this card, it's not fairy efficient. Moving on. Gabriel Archon, while the Tyrannox was a vanilla guy, it did require only 1 lake, which was its saving grace. This, on the other hand, requires 2 lakes, so you can't pump it out as fast. And the stats are nice, but usually not good enough. I mean, 2 lakes is a big cost. You would rather play just Tyrannax and Ancient Herald than Gabriel Archon. And by the way, Ancient Herald is really good, especially when you're playing green, because most of the green dudes are big, so it gives a discount. It's practically you could consider it as a 2 mana 3/5 because for the stat cost, because you get 3 mana back if you actually draw something, and usually you do if you're playing it in your deck. The Twitten Banquet is a really strong card. Buffs in this game are strong, and +1/+1 protection and jump give a lot of mobility and utility to the creature. The only issue is that it costs 5 Faeria. That's usually too much. So, while your card pool is not good enough, you would want to be playing it. But at the later points in time when you stock up on cards, you want to replace it with something more mana efficient. For example, there is an epic that's 2 mana 2/2, which gives you treat and bank to your hand. That's actually really good because you get a body, but just 5 mana, it's usually not worth a deck slot otherwise. The Stormspawn is an interesting card. The issue with this card is that it costs 10 mana. If opponent is playing blue and frogifies it or plays Unbound Evolution on it, and there is other cards, then you will lose that 10 mana. That's the issue with this card. It's plus you need to actually have 10 Faeria to play it, so usually it's not included in the decks. But there are some cases like decks with Ancient Herald and some other things where you could want to be playing it, but that's limited. You won't be usually including it in your decks. As for Windfall, it gives you practically it gives you 3 Faeria. It does require 2 legs, but it is Faeria acceleration. So if you want your blue deck to get more Faeria at the expense of cards, you will be adding that. You should be making careful balance in your deck between Faeria producers and card draw effects, because